What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to College Football Talk with Peter Burnett. In today's episode, I'm talking about this upcoming spring scrimmage, practices, everything that goes into it between Syracuse and Colorado. I'm going to be talking about why I think it's good for the sport and maybe a couple holdups that I have. But before I get into it, if you go on to enjoy this video, please feel free to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you're always up to date whenever I upload. But first of all, if you saw my last video, it seemed to get a lot of traction in terms of impressions, not a ton of views, but last one was talking about the death of spring games and why I don't think it's good for the sport at all. Now, this potential opportunity that is coming up between Syracuse and Colorado is something that's very intriguing to me. It does feel a little bit like the NFL, but I think there's a lot of good that can come of it. So just kind of the basics of it. Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, the head coach for the Colorado Buffaloes, kind of floated the idea of having this NFL-style, week of practice leading into a scrimmage against another school, not just inside of the program, but another school. So he said, I would like to style it like the pros. I would like to practice against someone for a few days. Then you have the spring game. I think the public would be satisfied with that tremendously. Now, I think this is really good for the sport. We've seen in the NFL, and obviously what it results in a lot of times is, we see those fights that we've seen on Hard Knocks or just on social media between the two teams. So I think there's definitely that angle. I think that's a small piece of it. That's just what you have. I mean, you have teams, the same team guys will fight because they're competitive, their juices are flowing. That's sports, and that's football especially. That's just what's going to happen. I honestly really like this idea. Would these practices leading up to the scrimmage be available to, the public? Versus, would it be broadcasted, or would it just be, pay for, tickets that you can come and see this? I think it's really cool. Syracuse coach Fran is an up-and-coming coach in the sport, and he even mentioned something that is pretty awesome as well. He said, for us to be the first to do it at two historic schools would mean a lot, Brown said. Two African-American men to have the opportunity of doing that means a lot, especially with Coach Sanders, Coach Prime, being an icon. So this is a really cool opportunity. Again, the details of it are not set in stone quite yet, but both coaches have made statements saying that they are going to be doing this. So it's just kind of a matter of ironing out those details and figuring out what it's going to look like. Now, before I get into, what I really like about this, my holdups are, college football continues to look more like the NFL. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, but it is something to be aware of, and something that, the professionalization is maybe a little bit of a negative. But on the flip side, I really like this. I think it gives more exposure to both of these schools. It gets competitive juices flowing. The thing about the spring is it is so separate from the season. These rosters that go at it might not necessarily be the same by the time the fall football season rolls around. But I do also like it because it gives us an opportunity to not just see, it's interesting to see Colorado against Colorado. I think they're probably the black and gold game. I'm not exactly sure what the Buffaloes call it out there, their typical spring game, but I think this is awesome, especially because teams have been going away from the spring game, calling it a spring showcase, focusing more on 7-on-7 or drills, which just feels so much like a watered-down all-star game, like what we see with the Pro Bowl in the NFL and with the NBA All-Star game. Such a lack of competition. I think what the NHL did is something that a lot of leagues should take note of for how to make an all-star game interesting. It's so unique, too, what the NHL did. But anyways, I think this is, again, it's a fascinating opportunity. I'm personally looking really much looking forward to this because I think, we'll get to see these two programs. I think this is something you can expect to see at bigger programs. That's not to talk down on Colorado or Syracuse, but, I'm talking about teams that have, recently won national championships. Seeing Georgia potentially go up against... they're showing too. It's cross country. It's not league related. It's probably outside of a league. So, who knows? Maybe Georgia goes up against an Oregon or something like that, or Ohio State against Alabama. That is probably a ways away from happening, but things can snowball pretty quickly, especially in this era of instant gratification and just how things happen so instantly. But we'll have to wait and see on that. Those are kind of my thoughts on it. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on this, kind of joint practice and scrimmage that Syracuse and Colorado are planning. And let me know also in the comments below if you'd like to see your team do this as well. But that is all for this episode of College Football Talk. A little bit of a shorter one, especially because a lot of the attention is focused on March Madness. But if you stuck around, thank you so much for taking the time to watch College Football Talk. I'm going to be bringing lots of content as we get into spring, transfers, recruiting classes, previewing the season ahead, looking at schedules maybe too. My top games. I did that last year and it seemed to do really well. So thanks again for watching College Football Talk. I'm your host, Peter Burnett, signing out. Peace.